A place to call home. It's the American dream. Yet statistics show that homelessness is on the rise in the U.S. Although it's difficult to measure the exact number of people who are homeless, in 2007, experts estimated that in a given year, about 3.5 million people would be homeless, with over one-third of those being children. In today's economy, those estimates are increasing, due in part to factors such as a sharp decline in employment opportunities, lack of affordable housing, and insufficient access to health care.
The number one reason people are homeless is because they've lost a job. So especially in these times, that creates a great deal of anxiety for people. They lose their income, or they have other issues like they can't pay their medical bills, for example, or they have some kind of bankruptcy issue, which is really common or becoming even more common.
Though there are many reasons why people find themselves without a permanent safe dwelling, for most people, homelessness is a temporary state. For those people who are homeless and suffering from mental disorders, the likelihood of re-entering society is significantly decreased.
There's a lot of misperceptions about what mental illness is all about. But some of the mental illnesses most common in our society today include schizophrenia, bipolar, and major depression. And if they're untreated, the individual becomes consumed by what they're feeling. When you add on top of that the lack of a home, it becomes very difficult to manage the stability that they need to stay housed. They are dealing with their psychological and psychiatric disorders, and they're at the same time trying to hold down a job. They're trying to care for the children and not having enough resources to pay for rent. And so when all these things come together, it becomes extremely problematic for an individual or a family to stay in stable housing.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reports that the majority of mentally ill homeless do not need to be institutionalized and contend that with proper support and stable housing, they can be productive members of the community. Yet currently, there are not enough community-based programs and housing options to meet these needs. That's why there's a growing need for communities to support local efforts to treat and house those struggling with homelessness due to mental illness.
We just thought it was extremely important for us to do something about it. So we work on trying to get families off the streets and into permanent housing, and we work on trying to get people who've been chronically homeless, who are particularly sick, off the street. What you'll find is that that's the most effective way to deal with homelessness. Give someone a place to live. And then if they need services, you give them the services. We've got great organizations in Los Angeles that are working on these issues. So we're just glad to partner with really good institutions by giving them support.
Permanent supportive housing operations like the ones set up by a community of friends in Los Angeles are proven to successfully reintroduce formerly homeless citizens to society.
We look at the individual tenant and do whatever it takes to get them successful as an individual and as a tenant in housing. Those are the two key factors that make our program such a success, and we find that when we focus on the individual and their needs, that they themselves excel.
What happens is that we have the support here that I didn't have when I was alone. That's how I think of it. It's like I was alone, now I'm not. So when if I get ill, we can take care of it really quickly. You know, no one's embarrassed. You know, you can still hold your head up after you're well.
The services we found have been critical to keeping the tenants focused and keeping them stable. And so they include things as simple as independent living skills, which for us means budgeting, cooking classes, cleaning classes, as well as anger management. And if they're a parent, we have parenting classes. We have nutrition, we have exercise classes, we have employment and job training opportunities. And we certainly have some volunteer opportunities to keep the tenants engaged so that they become productive and eventually, hopefully, volunteer out in the community and gain employment as well.
Without services like these, the mentally ill homeless are less likely to be active participants in their communities and are also more likely to be victims of crime and deteriorating health.
It is more effective to keep someone off the street by giving them a place to live than having them cycle through jails, ERs. If you go to any ER room, you're going to find many homeless people who, just because of all kinds of reasons, end up in that emergency room, and they cost the system, meaning you and me, a lot of money. And so what we try to do is get them housed and get them the services they want and need in order to become stable. So just from an economic perspective, it makes sense to reduce and eliminate homelessness, but also just from a moral perspective. You know, if this is a developed nation, then we should be setting the example by how we treat the most vulnerable among us.
People who have mental illness tend to know what their situation is, but they react and talk to people and go about the business the same way as everyone else. They will have bouts of depression. They will have bouts when something flares up and they hear voices. But it is treatable, and it is something that all the tenants are grappling with. People who have mental illness are not going to be running around their neighborhoods. They're going to be in housing. They're going to be in a safe environment. They're going to have activities to work on and personal goals to achieve. And so it's no different than anybody else what they want for their lives, to be better, to improve education for their children. Our tenants are in the same situation.
When I first moved here, I cried, you know, because I felt like if my mom would have had this kind of support, you know, life would have been easier for me. You know, and with my daughter, you know, she can feel proud about where she lives.
I think it's easy for us to look past homeless people. We do it all the time. We never give them a sense of their own humanity. And when you volunteer and you start working with these, you know, homeless families, it becomes a completely different issue, and you get really connected to it. And I think that's important. I think those are the first steps that people need to take.
Everyone deserves a place to feel safe, to live independently, to call home. That's why a community of friends has been dedicated to providing supportive, independent living housing for people suffering from mental illness since 1988.
20-somewhat years ago, there was a recognition that there were a lot of homeless people on the street with mental illness, and nobody was addressing their housing needs. And so that became a very clear motivation for our organization and how we got formed. And in fact, our name is derived from the fact that we wanted to create a community where people felt like they were among friends.
A nonprofit housing organization founded in Los Angeles, a community of friends, has completed 34 apartment projects which now house more than 1,200 individuals and families, many of whom had nowhere else to turn.
I lost my eldest son, and that put me in a deep depression. And I started going to a mental health facility. And in doing that, my daughter and I, we were staying in my car, literally, because I couldn't work. And they put us in touch with Community of Friends.
The mission of our organization is to end homelessness, which is a very broad goal and a very big goal. And we plan to do that by building permanent supportive housing over and over again in communities where people live.
If I hadn't found this program, I'd probably be dead. Thank God that I'm not. I was able to see my daughter graduate from high school. I'm able to see her to go on to college and pursue her career that she wants. She wants to be a veterinarian. And Community of Friends just saved our lives.
A Community of Friends is working to expand their programs to continue improving the lives of the mentally ill. But it can't be done without your support. Help make a difference in your community today. For more information or to support a Community of Friends, please call 213-480-0809 or visit ACOF.org.